every podcast ends. That's not something we like to talk about in the middle of a conversation, but it's true. Every conversation eventually finds its closing words. This is the final episode of the Auto Ethnographer podcast. My name is John Steck, the Auto Ethnographer. And over the course of this episode, I'm going to tell you why this is the last episode. But to understand why, you first need to understand what is happening to people over 50 around the world right now. Not in the abstract, not as a policy debate, as a human reality. We're going to take a global tour. We're going to look at ageism in the United States, in Germany, in China, and in Japan. We're going to hear from a man who spent his career studying what he calls the age debt crisis. And we're going to return to a conversation that we had right here on the Auto Ethnographer last summer about ageism in Vietnam and the threshold to being too old, which dropped so dramatically that it actually takes your breath away. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you about what I'm doing next. And I want to invite you to come along with me. So today, we're going to explore why. Why ageism is not a future problem. Why it's a present-day crisis. And why I've decided that the most important thing that I can do is to stop talking about culture in abstract terms and start to help people who are living through this crisis right now. But first, let's look at the world. The Auto Ethnographer, your weekly cultural trip around the world. In America, youth is equated with innovation and speed. Age is equated with cost. It's a culture that celebrates reinvention. And reinvention, by definition, it implies that the old version is no longer sufficient. The result is a particular kind of invisibility. Age discrimination in the United States, it's rarely detected, but it's highly structural. It lives in layoffs disguised as restructuring. It lives in job postings that ask for digital natives, a phrase that sounds modern, but functionally it excludes everyone who learned how to type on a typewriter. According to AARP, the American Association of Retired Persons, approximately 64% of workers over 50 have experienced age discrimination in the workplace. 64%. And that is not a marginal issue. Think about it. That's a majority of an entire generation of working professionals being told in various ways that frankly, their time has passed. 22% reported feeling actively just pushed out of their jobs. If I'm being honest with you, I've actually seen this. Not in data, but in the faces of people that I know. People who built their careers, who've raised families, who contributed to their organizations for decades. And then they were told that they were no longer needed. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, they issued a warning recently that America is running out of skilled tradespeople. The average age of a sewer, a seamstress, or a tailor in America is 54. 54. And that average has skyrocketed over the last decade. We're going to hear more about that statistic from my guest, Dan Pontefract, a little later in this episode. But the point here is this. In America, ageism is invisible by design. It doesn't announce itself, and it just simply removes you. And the culture moves on as if you were never there. In Germany, the cultural logic is different. Germany is a country that's built its entire identity on precision, on engineering, and on institutional continuity. The same institutions that value experience are now watching their workforce age out faster than they can replace it. According to 2025 data, 90% of older job seekers in Germany, they encounter age-related discrimination during interviews. 90%. 59% believe that their age actively creates hiring barriers. I have a friend who works as a recruiter in Germany, and he cannot get his clients to consider older candidates. The working age population is expected to shrink by approximately 9% over the next 10 years. Germany, it loses between 340 and 400,000 people every year to retirement, more than it gains new workers every year. The working age population is expected to shrink by 4.3 million a decade from now in 2036. I find this genuinely fascinating. Not because the numbers are interesting, no, but because Germany is not a country that genuinely is hostile to older workers. Germany respects craftsmanship. Germany respects institutional knowledge. Germany respects the idea that experience accumulates into wisdom. But the math is unforgiving. The system that once supported lifelong careers is now watching as the floor is literally giving away. Not because of hostility, but because demographics is meeting up with denial. When you step closer, you can really appreciate the scale of what's happening here in Germany. It's not a crisis of values like it is in the United States. It's a crisis of numbers. And the numbers are winning. In China, the culture that once venerated the wisdom of elders has been overwritten by a hyper-competitive labor market that treats 35 as an expiration date. Yeah, you heard that correctly. 35. In China, there is a phenomenon known as the curse of 35. Age discrimination in hiring begins at 35. Not 50, not 60, 35. In 2025, China, they raised the maximum hiring age for civil service positions from 35 to 38. It was the first time they had done this in 3 decades. Think about that. For 30 years, the largest civil service on the planet told people that at 35, they were simply too old to serve. The job market in China right now, it's so saturated that approximately 98 applicants apply for every single civil service post that's advertised. And fresh graduates, they're flooding the market every single year, making 35, frankly, seem, in the words of one observer, old enough to be completely overlooked. The irony here, it's truly sharp. Think about it. The Confucian tradition, it places the elders at the center of moral and social authority. Age in that tradition is not a liability. Instead, it's the source of wisdom, of judgment, and of stability. But China's economic engine, it doesn't reward authority. It rewards efficiency, speed, and the ability to work for less. The curse of 35, it's not just a hiring practice. It's actually a cultural rupture. A society is literally turning its back on its foundational principle in exchange for productivity. And then there's Japan. Japan is the country that the Bank of Japan economist warned Dan Pontefract about. It is the future arriving early. And as of 2024, Japan had a record 36 million people aged 65 and older. That accounts for approximately 30% of the entire population. 30%. In 2024, adult diapers outsold baby diapers in Japan. I want you to sit with that for just a moment. Adult diapers outsold baby diapers. That's not just a punchline. That's a signal that an entire society has crossed a threshold. The infrastructure of care has shifted from children to adults. Japan's predicament, it stems from having closed borders, plummeting birth rates, and a contracting population as a result. Japan's ageism, it's different than China's or America's. It's not loud, it's not hostile, it's simply demographic. The country is aging faster than its institutions can adapt. And the result is a society whose fundamental structure of daily life is being changed to revolve around the elderly. And Japan is not an outlier. No, Japan is a preview for the rest of us. And in a few minutes, you're going to hear Dan Pontefract describe exactly what that Japanese economist told him. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it, as Dan says. The conversation that you're about to hear is with Dan Pontefract. Dan is a leadership and culture strategist, an author, and someone who has spent years studying what he calls the age debt crisis. He just released his new book, The Future of Work is Gray. And in it, he identifies 4 different categories of crisis. Number 1, the demographic disruption, the mathematics of literal population collapse. And then number 2, ageism, both invisible and blatant, from the 16-year-old fry cook to the Warren Buffett who recently retired. Number 3, there's longevity. Institutions are unprepared for people living longer, working longer, and needing longer careers in systems that are designed for shorter ones. And then there's number 4, wisdom loss, the hollowing out of institutional knowledge when older workers are terminated and decades of experience walk out the door with them. In our conversation, we call it a train crash that everyone can clearly see is coming, and yet there's not much reaction to it. So let us listen to that conversation right now.
For me, what it came down to was 4 key, I suppose, categories of debt that accumulate this overall age debt. So very simply, number 1 is demographic apocalypse / demographic disruption. There's a age debt blindness for leaders and organizations that just are not listening to the tarot cards of demography change. So we can maybe tackle that a little bit. So demography change, number 1. Number 2, to the point of this wonderful podcast and what you're digging into, ageism. I mean, it is both invisible and blatant. And it is not just ageist for older workers. We're talking ageism right through the organization, from the 16-year-old fry guy at Wendy's to the Warren Buffett, recently retired. So you see it right across the gamut. Mm-hmm. Number 3 is indeed longevity, meaning organizations and the people who are under their employ, no one's really thinking or helping the organization prepare for a longevity type, I guess, lifestyle, work style. And so that may be things like not doing anything about menopause for women who may be suffering from menopause, or just sort of, oh, we don't talk about that. That's not a thing. We're like, oh, wait a second. Like, actually, it is a thing. Or grandparent care, where a grandparent may be looking after because of the fact that they're still at work and they're grandparents, but they're actually supporting children that are, 20, 18, 16, 10. So just a bunch of things that aren't happening with the discussion of where longevity is going. And in particular to that is also preparing to live longer. So the financial pieces to living longer, which is a good news story, but we're not really helping organizations or employees see the forest through the trees on that one. And then the fourth is wisdom. So there is, sadly, this is affecting mostly organizations who have employed middle to older age workers, and then they gas them. They're gone. They're gaslit out of the organization. They are terminated. They're annexed. They're nixed. Whatever word you want. And what we don't do, and what's happening is there's this hollowing out of knowledge and wisdom and intelligence and tacit knowledge. And these organizations are now like, well, where's Betty? And what happened to payroll? I've been paid in 3 weeks. Or where's Junip? And Junip used to have that relationship with Procter and Gamble, but we just lost the account. Like, how did Junip know what to do with P&G? So long story short, demography, ageism, longevity, and wisdom. Those four add up to age debt. And it is blatantly obvious to me in the research I did that it is here and now in Asia, in Europe, and coming for the Americas. But it is weirdly ignored. And so the age debt is piling up wherever I look. And it's just something that needs to be talked about, discussed, and hopefully at least eradicated to the point where we can look at it as an opportunity for doing something different. That's a great question. Let's go Asia, Europe, Americas, and just sort of like follow the westerly wind, as I call it, I guess. So I'm sitting in one of the, I'll never forget this. So I'm sitting in the 20th floor of the Bank of Japan talking with one of their economists. And basically, this is the two lines that were used on me after sort of 90 minutes of charts and like looking at the future of Japan, etc. Number one, Dan, when you go back to Canada, make sure that you tell your people not to do what Japan is doing. I was like, well, okay, so that's good. That's from the chief economist. That's very interesting. Number two, Dan, did you know in 2024, adult diapers outsold baby diapers in Japan?
Wow.
And then my jaw dropped. And I thought, okay. That is just not something that's ever computed in my head before, but here we are.
No.
And so that's Japan. That's now China. It's certainly South Korea. You look at where Asia, as I call it, the kind of canary in the age coal mine, those countries, like basically Asia, mostly, generally speaking, Asia. There's a couple outlier countries, but mostly Asia is in the same predicament, is that because there was not a lot of immigration, sort of closed borders, and then birth rates plummeted. So you can see the contraction of their population and their GDP and them scrambling to figure out how they keep their economies rolling. That's today. If you go west from Asia, if you will, going that way, towards Europe, you're beginning to see now the fraying of the sweater or the fraying of the scarf, whichever way you want it, and the yarn is now it's like 20 meters downstream. You're like, wait, that used to be part of the sweater or the scarf. What's going on? Whether it's France or Italy or Germany or Switzerland, they are beginning right now to enter into a OMG moment, whereby they realize that in certain sectors, they just don't have bodies that are up and coming. So they are struggling / grappling with what to do. So for example, in Italy, their construction workers are now at a point in which that they're pleading with younger workers, younger people to come into the trades, to come into construction. Their average age has shot up over the last 10 years. And so they're just not having the same type of progression from a talent perspective, a pool perspective of in the construction industry. That's just one. I could go through all of it and say they are now beginning, right, to grapple with what it is that they're going to do. In the Americas, OMG is just about to hit. So Canada's birth rate plummeting just like the other two regions currently sits at 1.26. And as immigration levels have been capped, or I guess lowered, as has happened in the US, you can now see again stress. So just a couple examples. In Canada, just about a month ago, so the federal government sort of holds a big press conference. And I paid attention to this particular one because it was the industry minister coming out and saying, all right, folks, we're going to run out of miners. If any young people would like to come into the mining profession, we've got a ticket for you. And they've done the math from a demographics perspective and realized that the average age of the miners in Canada is like 49. They're like, oof, what are we going to do here? In America, the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, sort of issued a plea a couple weeks ago and said, we're running out of sewers and seamstresses. You're like, what? Like, yeah. So if you want your suit tailored, etc., the average age of the sewer seamstress tailor in America is 54. The average age. And so you're like, what? Like, people don't want to get into the sewing seamstress, tailor profession? Turns out not. A line I've used with my publisher, who she's just amazing. I say to Jesse, I said this last year, I said, look, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so every time that I see her and we talk about the book or whatever, she's like, when you told me that line, that's like, now I see it everywhere. It's like, I cannot unsee this demographic change that's happening.
A train crash, you can clearly see it's coming. I think about that metaphor a lot because Dan is right. The data, they're not hidden. The demographics, they're not a secret. The numbers, they're published. And the trends are documented. And the stories are everywhere that you're willing to listen to people over 50. You don't need to be in Japan to feel this. You don't need to be in Germany or in China. You just need to be over 50 and looking for work right now. And that is what I want to talk about next. Because ageism is not only a macroeconomic phenomenon, it's also cultural, and it's personal, and it's very specific. To illustrate that, I want to return to a conversation that I had on this very channel on the Auto Ethnographer about ageism in Vietnam back in August 2025. It's a country where traditionally age represented experience, where older workers were valued, where the culture appreciated the accumulated wisdom of age. And Vietnam, where today the threshold for being considered too old has dropped so far that it would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. So let's listen to Kelvin Nguyen, a human resources recruiter in Vietnam, tell that story from our conversation last summer.
So based on the culture, I think like Vietnam and the US is kind of different in cultures. For Vietnamese, age is like represent for experience. So basically, before in like 10 or 20 years before, like people with age mean that they have experience in the workforce and they are appreciated by most of the companies. But with the advancement of technologies and AI, things changing like dramatically in the last 5 years, and like in the last 2 years, it's like totally changed because like now people with technology skills and like they can use AI. The young people, they have much more advantage. So even people with experience, they can be replaced by young people with, like the suitable skills for the organizations. Because for most of the companies and organizations, efficiency is like the most important thing they're looking for in this very, challenging world nowadays. So yeah, even with the culture that like appreciate the age, the experience, it cannot avoid the fact that many professional with experience now are being replaced by the young people with like technology skills. I read a story on LinkedIn yesterday, the like LinkedIn of like a Vietnamese professional, and he complained that before some month before, people are worrying about like when they get over 45 years old, it's very difficult for them to get a job. But now it's become 35, not 45 anymore. So it's changing like very quickly. And you know that, as I said before, it's not about the age. It's about the adaptability and the ability to learn things quickly. I'm in my 35 years old, like era now, and I totally, understand that.
In Vietnamese culture, age traditionally represented experience, and experience was appreciated. It was valued by companies. It carried weight, and also it's just the cultural logic in that society. But in the last 5 years, in the last 2 years specifically, that logic has been overwritten by a different logic, a global logic, a logic of efficiency. For most companies and organizations today, efficiency is the most important thing that they're looking for. Not wisdom, not institutional knowledge, not the judgment that comes from having seen cycles repeat. Efficiency. That's the word that they're looking for. And so in a country that once venerated age, 35 has become the new 45. I want you to feel the weight of that. A culture that respected elders, overwritten by an economic engine that doesn't reward authority, that instead rewards speed and the ability to use AI and the ability to operate technology and to work faster and to work for less. When you step closer, you can really appreciate the human cost behind that statistic. Because 35, that's not old. 35 is a person with a career ahead of them, with a family to support, probably young children, with contributions to still make. And they're being told that they are already past their prime. Vietnam's story is the story of a culture that respected its elders, being overwritten by a global culture and logic that doesn't. And that's not just Vietnam's story. That's, frankly, the story of the world. It's the story of friends of mine, people I worked with, people that I admired, people who built their careers across continents and cultures, and who in 2025 found themselves being pushed out. And that is what I need to talk about now. In 2025, I probably saw 100 peers and friends pushed out of work. Not one or two, 100. People in their 50s and in their 60s. Professionals with decades of experience. People who had built careers and raised families and contributed to their communities and also served their organizations with distinction. And then, in various ways, they were told that they were no longer needed. Some, they got a phone call. Some, they got an email. And some, they were subjected to what corporations call restructuring. Some were simply passed over quietly without any explanation until they understood for themselves the message and they just left on their own. And it was not just my friends. It was hundreds of thousands of people beyond my own personal circle. Probably millions, perhaps, around the world. People who had done everything right, who had played by the rules, who had invested in their careers, in their skills, in their organizations, and who at 50, 55, or 60 found themselves on the outside of a system that they had spent their lives building. They need help, not platitudes, not the suggestion that maybe you should have planned better, right? And they don't need to be told the empty optimism of being told that 50 is the new 30. No. What they need is practical help adapting to a new life, a different life over 50. They need help navigating a next career, what that might look like. They need help understanding that the end of one career is not the end of a productive life. That is why I started the Ageism Survival Guide. It's a podcast. It's a platform. It's an entire ecosystem. It was set up to help people in this critical time of need. People who are facing ageism not as a concept, not as some policy debate, but as a daily activity in their own lives. And that is why the Auto Ethnographer podcast is ending. Not because the stories stopped mattering. No, they didn't. The stories still matter. The cultural exploration that defined this show is as important as it has ever been. The world, it needs people who can listen across cultures, who can translate behavior into meaning, and also who can step closer and appreciate what they find. But the urgency has also shifted. The cultural exploration that defined the Auto Ethnographer is now in service of a more immediate mission: helping real people survive a real crisis. The Auto Ethnographer, it taught me how to listen across cultures. Ageism Survival Guide is where I'm going to apply that listening, but to people who need answers now. I have friends that I hope to keep for the rest of my life. Friends who lost careers, friends who are rebuilding, friends who are now scared, not knowing what to do or where to turn next. This new channel, this is for them. And if you're listening to this, and if you're over 50, and if you felt the weight of what I'm describing, then this is for you too. I want to thank you. Thank you to every listener who has been part of the Auto Ethnographer journey. Across continents, across cultures, and across all of our conversations. Thank you to the guests who sat with me and who shared their experiences, their stories, and their cultural insights. You all made this show what it was. Thank you to the people who commented and who wrote in, who told me that one episode or another made them think differently about a culture that either they had never visited or looked different at a culture that they'd seen before but they'd missed something. Ending a podcast is not ending a mission. It's, in this case, redirecting it. The values that drove the Auto Ethnographer, the curiosity, the cultural humility, the belief that human stories transcend borders and oceans, those values are not going anywhere. They are now moving with me to the Ageism Survival Guide. Ageism Survival Guide is a podcast. It's a platform. It's a resource for professionals over 50 who are navigating what comes next. It can be found at ageismsurvivalguide.com, all one word, and the links are all going to be found down below in the show notes. Whether you've been pushed out of work or whether you're contemplating a career transition on your own, whether you're trying to understand how ageism operates in your industry or in your country, Ageism Survival Guide is there for you. I hope you're going to join me there. I genuinely do. Because the conversation, it's not over. It's just beginning. In a new place, with a new, sharper focus, and a greater purpose. My name is John Yuan Steck. This has been the Auto Ethnographer, and this is the final episode. But the conversation continues at Ageism Survival Guide. I hope you're going to join me there.